Welcome, dreamers, to another journey through time's hidden corridors. I am your guide through the dreaming historian, where ancient mysteries whisper their secrets to those who dare to listen. Tonight we venture into the heart of the Central American rainforest, to a place once echoing with ritual chants, the rhythm of stone tools, and the watching eyes of temples that scrape the sky. This is the story of Tikal, one of the most powerful and enigmatic cities of the ancient Maya. For centuries, it flourished with grandeur. But then, in silence as deep as midnight fog, it was left to the jungle. What caused the people of Tikal to vanish from their great city? Was it war, famine, cosmic omen, or something more elusive, something we still do not fully grasp? Before we embark on this mystical journey, if these whispers from the past resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle like, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing for more nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Share with us, fellow dreamers, from which corner of the world you are joining tonight's contemplation. Let our global community of mystery seekers connect across time zones as we drift together into the past. Now, settle into comfort, close your eyes, and let the ancient voices guide you into peaceful contemplation. Let us begin. Beneath the thick green veil of Guatemala's northern lowlands, there lies a place where the earth remembers. The canopy murmurs in ancient tongue, and the cries of howler monkeys echo like ancestral spirits watching from trees older than empires. Here stone temples rise through the mist, their grey faces scarred by time, yet stoic silent sentinels of a forgotten grandeur. Tikal, once the pulsing heart of the Mayan world, sleeps under vines and shadows. But listen closely, and you may hear the heartbeat of a civilization that once touched the stars. The jungle was not always this quiet. Once it rang with human life priests chanting to gods named in starlight, rulers cloaked in jaguar skins, farmers coaxing life from the red soil, and astronomers charting the heavens with precision rivaling today's minds. The city stretched across more than 16 square kilometers, with over 3,000 structures piercing the sky or disappearing into sacred wells of earth. But why did it fade? How does a city of such magnitude, rich in culture, science, and power, simply wither into myth? To answer this, we must travel back through leaves of time, back to the first footprints on the forest floor. They say the earliest whispers of Tikal began around 600 BC, not with a roar, but with a hum. Simple platforms, scattered homes, a few stone carvings echoing with hope. These were the first breaths of a city that would one day dream in stone. The people who founded Tikal were attuned to rhythms we no longer hear. They read the sky not merely for weather but for fate. The stars were calendars, gods, and prophecy, and the jungle, it was not wilderness, it was alive, sacred, threaded with paths, both physical and spiritual. The city grew not from conquest alone, but from belief. It grew from harmony with celestial cycles, with the rains and the maize. The Mayan worldview was cyclical. Life was a wheel, and time turned upon great gears of prophecy and sacrifice. Every building they raised was not merely architecture, it was cosmology etched in limestone. By 250 AD the hum had grown into a song. This was the dawn of the classic period. Tikal became a power among the stars. Temples rose like mountains, aligned perfectly with solstice, shadows, and lunar stations. Temple the first, the Temple of the Great Jaguar, rose to 60 feet high, built as a tomb for Jasor Chan Kaowil, one of Tikal's greatest rulers. Opposite it, Temple 2 honored his wife, reflecting the sacred duality at the heart of Mayan life. The great plaza that lay between them was more than space, it was performance, calendar, cosmos, a place where time itself was honored through blood and dance. But power invites shadow. As Tikal grew, so too did its enemies. The Maya world was never united. City-states vied for dominance like stars competing for night's attention. Caracol, Calakmul, Dos Pilos. Each cast long shadows across the forest floor. Tikal's alliances were carved in jade and sealed with marriage or war. Its kings bore names like Fire, Rain, and Curl Snout, names that live now only on stele, their meanings half-remembered like dreams at dawn. Around 562 AD, the city's song was nearly silenced. Tikal suffered a great defeat, perhaps at the hands of Calakmul, the Snake Kingdom. For more than a century, silence ruled the great plaza. No new stele were raised, no monuments carved. It was as if time held its breath. But Tikal was not yet done. In the late 7th century, Jasor Chan Kaowil emerged, a name carved like a thunderclap. He restored Tikal's pride with brilliant victories, revived the arts, and cast new shadows across the jungle floor. Under his reign and that of his descendants, the city sang again. The city reached its golden age, and its population may have soared beyond 100,000. Ceremonies dazzled the plazas. Trade routes stretched to the sea. The temples glistened in morning dew like sleeping giants crowned with gold. Yet even amidst glory something shifted. The stars did not move differently. The sun still rose. But beneath the sacred symmetry of city and sky, cracks began to form. The very jungle that fed Tikal began to turn against it. Deforestation to clear land for crops and plaster devastated the land's fertility. The grand reservoirs, once engineered with genius, began to turn toxic leaks with mercury and heavy metals from ritual paints and decay. Rain fell less often. When it did, it brought more ruin than nourishment. The people once connected through story, ceremony, and star began to fragment. The gods still demanded sacrifice, but the harvest did not come. The rulers still raised steely, but their words grew brittle. There was unrest, disillusionment, and hunger beneath the temple's shadows. And then, the Exodus, not in a single night, nor with fire and war, but a quiet retreat. By 900 AD, the city was largely abandoned. No more kings walked the causeways. The great plazas lay empty beneath the sun. The jungle, patient and eternal, reclaimed its own. Was it only drought, only politics? Or did the people of Tikal sense a deeper imbalance, something we no longer hear? The truth is not singular. It never is. The fall of Tikal was not a fall at all, but a fading, a dissolving into the rhythms of earth once more, like a dream that ends not in alarm, but in soft awakening. And so, the city sleeps, not dead, but dreaming, its secrets buried in glyphs and stone, its voice murmuring beneath the moss, a voice we will continue to follow. For in the next chapter, we will climb the temples of Tikal at dawn. We will hear the songs once sung to the heavens, and we will meet the kings and queens whose dreams shaped this city of stone. As morning mist weaves through the towering ceiba trees, the ancient stones of Tikal begin to glow in hues of rose and gold. Dawn is not simply a time, here it is a ritual, an awakening. The howler monkeys cry like distant drums, and birds wheel silently overhead, bearing the memory of ages. The city stirs not with footsteps, but with remembrance. Tikal was more than a city, it was a song in stone, each plaza a pause, each temple a note in a sacred melody composed over centuries. To live here was to live inside a cosmic composition, one that harmonized heaven and earth. Let us ascend now step by step into the sky. We climb Temple IV, the tallest of them all. Built around 741 AD, it rises 70 meters above the forest canopy, as though its builders meant to pierce the clouds. From its summit, one can see far across the jungle where other temples peek through the trees like sleeping titans. In the stillness of morning, it is not hard to imagine priests here, wrapped in embroidered robes, gazing upon the horizon to read the sun's dance across the year. Each angle, each stair, each stone in Tikal's temples was deliberate. Nothing stood at random. Temple the first, the temple of the great jaguar, faces west, capturing the light of the setting sooner, place for endings, for the passage of kings into the underworld. Temple 2, directly across, looks eastward to the dawn, a place of renewal. Their alignment is not mere artistry, is astronomy carved into architecture. The Mayans of Tikal were master skywatchers. Their observatories were not telescopes of glass and metal, but temples and pyramids calibrated to celestial rhythms. The movements of Venus, so sacred to their calendar, were followed with breathless reverence. Venus was not just a planet, it was a god, a warrior, a messenger between realms. At certain times of year, the sun would rise or set directly behind a temple peak, casting elongated shadows that slithered like serpents across the plaza floor. These were moments of immense significance, when the veil between worlds thinned, and time itself was thought to open. To the Mayans, time was alive, it breathed, it turned in cycles, not lines. The long count calendar tracked epochs that stretched far beyond a human life. The Tizocan, their sacred 260-day calendar, beat like a spiritual drum, marking days for offerings, rituals, and decisions. Each day had a personality, a spirit, a destiny. To live in Tikal was to live in rhythm with the land, the stars, and the gods that danced between. Even their numbers held power. 20 was sacred, as was 13. The calendar system combined these in complex wheels, turning like gears in a divine mechanism. These gears not only measured days, they foretold the rise of rulers, the fall of kingdoms, the proper time to plant, to sacrifice, to pray. Let us walk now into the central Acropolis. The structures here were not towering, but intricate. Palaces with labyrinthine rooms, courtyards, and corridor spaces where nobility lived. where decisions were whispered in the night, and where dynasties plotted or decayed. These halls echo with footfalls long faded, yet their presence still clings to the walls. In one chamber, the bones of a royal woman were found, her grave filled with offerings, obsidian blades, jade beads, and shells from the distant Caribbean. Perhaps she was a queen, or a priestess. Perhaps she once stood atop temple too and greeted the dawn with arms lifted to the sky. Across the plaza, we approach the North Acropolis. This is the oldest part of Tikal, sacred cemetery for the elite, a hill of memory. Layers upon layers of temples were built here, each stacked upon the last, like pages in a book of stone. It is here that steely rise tall, narrow slabs etched with glyphs and rulers' profiles. They speak of wars, of lineage, of rituals performed under eclipses. Each glyph is a syllable in the language of gods and kings, a testimony to time's great turning. Some steely stand, weathered and broken, as though humbled by centuries. Others remain sharp, their stories intact. Scholars have spent lifetimes decoding these messages, yet still the full meaning eludes us. The language of the Maya once thundered across plazas, now only whispers through a handful of lips. Let us not forget the ball court, just to the east of the great plaza here. The ritual ball game was played not as sport, but as myth reenacted. The rubber ball was the sun. The players were celestial beings. Victory meant cosmic harmony. Defeat could mean sacrifice. To the modern eye, it was a game. To the Maya, it was everything, the universe in motion, the struggle of light against darkness. As the morning deepens, we wander the Calzada Taza, a causeway that once pulsed with processions. Imagine torches lighting the night, incense trailing in silver spirals, the sound of flutes and rattles echoing through the trees. Priests walked here, barefoot on sacred ground, cloaked in the smoke of copal resin. Even the reservoirs held sacred meaning. Water was life, but also a mirror to the heavens. The Maya believed in a world above, a world below, and our world in between. Still water reflected stars. It was a portal to the underworld, the place of ancestors and gods. Yet with all its majesty, Tikal was not invincible. As we walk through its splendor, we also feel the strained effort to sustain so much beauty in a land that gives and takes in equal measure. For every temple, thousands labored. For every feast, forests fell. For every monument raised, the earth was carved and shaped. Still, the people believed. They endured. They sang to the sky, to their gods, to each other. And now, long after the voices fell silent, the stones still echo. In our next chapter, we descend into the underworld of belief. We will explore how the Maya viewed death, rebirth, and the sacred geography of Xibalba, the place of fear. Join us as we trace the invisible maps they left behind in stone and myth. The jungle stirs in twilight. The last rays of sun filter through the green canopy, turning leaves into emerald-stained glass. Beneath the earth, ancient tunnels and tombs rest in silence. But to the Maya, these places were not dead. They were doors. To understand the fall of Tikal, one must first understand how the Maya saw the soul's journey. Death was never an end, it was movement, transformation, a journey through worlds layered like the rings of a sacred tree. And at the root of it all was Xibalba. Xibalba, the Maya underworld. Its name means place of fear, yet it was not merely a realm of darkness. It was a necessary passage, a testing ground for the spirit, a mirror in which one's true essence was revealed. To walk the roads of Xibalba was to walk the path of kings, gods, and all who hoped for renewal. The entrances to this hidden world were not metaphors alone. The Maya carved literal portals, cenotes, sacred caves, and sunken temples where the earth opened its mouth to drink the rain. These places were revered as liminal spaces, where the veil between this world and the next grew thin. In Tikal, the reservoirs may have doubled as entrances to such realms. Still water was sacred. It reflected not only the sky above, but also the world below. The Maya believed in a vertical universe, tiered like the levels of a pyramid. The world above held the celestial gods and ancestors. The world below housed challenges, trials, and wisdom waiting to be earned. Xibalba was ruled by lords with names that echo like riddles: one death, seven death, gathered blood, and others whose dominions spanned disease, pain, and fate. They were not evil in a Western sense, they were part of the balance. One could not ascend without first descending. To prepare for death was to prepare for this journey. Rulers were buried with jade in their mouths, not as treasure, but as breath. Jade was the symbol of life, the sacred wind, the breath of the gods. The tombs themselves were maps of the cosmos, painted walls, stepped crypts, offerings placed at cardinal points, all meant to guide the soul like a star chart through the darkness. Let us descend now into the tomb of Joso Chan Kaowil, His burial site beneath Temple I is more than a gravit, is a cosmic vessel. Obsidian blades lie beside him, the tools of sacrifice and transformation. Shells from distant coasts speak of journeys beyond sight. A great diadem, perhaps once gleaming with feathers, now rests in quiet decay. But it is the positioning of his body that holds mystery. Aligned east to west, it echoes the sun's path. As the sun dies each evening in the west and is reborn in the east, so too was the king expected to traverse the underworld and rise again, transfigured. The Maya hero twins Hunahpu and Zebulong charted this path in myth long before any king. Their story, etched into the Popol Vuh, is a sacred guidebook to Xibalba. They were summoned to the underworld by the Lords of Death, tricked and tested, forced to navigate a labyrinth of trials, the House of Gloom, the House of Cold, the House of Jaguars. Each challenge was symbolic: fear, loss, isolation. But through cunning and courage, the twins prevailed. They outwitted death, and in their final act, transformed into the sun and moon. Their journey was the model for every Maya soul. The rulers of Tikal were seen as their descendants, not by blood alone, but by spirit. Every king walked a hero's path. Every queen channeled the wisdom of the goddess, Ikes Chel. Their rituals, often involving bloodletting and fire, were not acts of cruelty, but of cosmic maintenance. The spilling of royal blood fed the gods and kept the sun turning. But what happens when belief begins to flicker? In the final centuries of Tikal, the monuments grew smaller, the glyphs became rushed, uneven, offerings diminished. It is as if the rituals were being performed from memory, not faith. As the rains failed and crops withered, did the people believe the gods had turned away, or had the sacred paths become lost? Perhaps they no longer felt the connection. Perhaps Xibalba no longer seemed like a road to rebirth, but a place of fear once more. Still, the temples stood. The stelae held their tongues. The jungle crept in. Even today, archaeologists speak of tunnels beneath Tikal, yet unexplored. Places where the air grows thick and silent, where ancient stairways vanish into the roots of the world. In these spaces, it feels as though something still waits. A whisper, a memory, a breath. For the Maya, the soul does not travel alone. It moves with ancestors, with the echoes of ceremony, with the stars themselves. And so perhaps, though Tikal was abandoned, its people did not vanish. They stepped into another cycle, another layer of time. Let us leave these tunnels now and rise again into the fading twilight. In our next chapter, we turn our gaze outward to the vast trade networks that once connected Tikal to distant cities, oceans, and mountains. Through obsidian blades, jade ornaments, and cacao beans, the city spoke with a wider world. As dusk unfurls its velvet cloak over the canopy, the jungle becomes a sea of soft darkness, broken only by the last golden reflections on the leaves. But beneath this forest, beneath the soil and stone, lies another map, not of territory, but of memory. Tikal was never alone. Though hemmed in by thick forests and winding rivers, it pulsed with life not just within its own plazas, but through connections that stretched across mountains, valleys, and coastlines. Like veins carrying breath through the body, the Maya created roads of commerce, ritual, and knowledge. These were the jade roads, not literal highways of green stone, but sacred trade routes lined with meaning and movement. Through them flowed obsidian from highland Guatemala, cacao from the south, shells from the Caribbean, salt from the Caribbean, salt from the Anfeather's radiant Quetzal, plumes from the cloud forests. Every object carried more than value. Each was a fragment of distant prayers, exchanged through hands and time. Let us walk one of these sacred paths. Imagine a Maya merchant, barefoot upon packed earth, leading a line of porters, bearing bundles wrapped in woven mats. The jungle hums with insects. Birds call from unseen branches. The trail is marked not with signs, but by memory markers known by heart. Rivers that curve like serpents. Clearings where ancient gods once danced in rain. These traders were not mere vendors. They were storytellers, diplomats, messengers of realms beyond the horizon. And what they carried was more than wares, it was sacred connection. Obsidian blades, for instance, were more than tools. Their shimmering black edges reflected the underworld. They cut not just flesh, but the veil between the mundane and divine. Sourced from distant volcanic regions, their presence in Tikal speaks to the reach of the city's spiritual and political arm. Jade, cool and green like the breath of the earth, held the essence of life itself. To the Maya, jade was not wealth in the modern sense, it was life captured in stone. It adorned the bodies of the elite in death and was worn as pendants carved into the shapes of gods, serpents, and glyphs. When a king was buried, it was jade that filled his mouth. guiding him to the next world. Cacao too flowed along these routes. The beans were more than drink or delicacy, they were currency. 1,000 years before the Spanish brought coin, the Maya counted in beans. One could buy a rabbit for 10 cacao beans, a prostitute for 800. In sacred rites, cacao was mixed with blood and consumed in ceremonies honoring the gods of fertility, death, and rain. But trade was not only for goods, it was for stories. From distant cities like Teotihuacan in central Mexico came emissaries, warriors, priests. Their arrival marked a shift in Tikal's destiny. Around 378 AE, a visitor named Siag Cake, translated as Fire is Born, arrived from the distant north, likely under the auspices of Teotihuacan's great rulers. He did not come as conqueror, but as a spark. Within days, the ruling king of Tikal was gone. A new lineage began, likely blending Maya tradition with Teotihuacano ritual. This moment was more than politics, it was myth incarnate. It marked the fusion of fire and maize, of jaguar and obsidian. The murals at distant Bonampak and the glyphs at whisper of these shifts. Stories that began in the highlands ended in the plazas of Tikal, and vice versa. Trade was the bloodstream of an entire civilization, and Tikal was the beating heart. Even the city's very layout echoed the flow of these routes. The causeways, wide paved roads, known as sack-biblinked temples, neighborhoods, and distant outposts. White roads, made of crushed limestone. They gleamed under moonlight like rivers of bone. Walking them was not mere travel. It was a rite, a journey between sacred spaces. And always, at the center of it all, was water. Water was not simply survival. It was spirit. It was seen, revered, offered to, and received as a divine being. Rainfall was celebrated with ceremonies that invited Chok, the rain god, to bless the crops. Droughts were met with desperation and deepening ritual. Tikal's ingenuity in water management is one of its quiet wonders. Lacking rivers nearby, the Maya created a network of reservoirs, artificial lakes with clay linings, strategically placed to capture rain. Some were vast, enough to supply thousands. Their shapes were not haphazard. They were sacred geometry, reflecting the order of the cosmos. Recent discoveries suggest these reservoirs were more than utilitarian. Their contents, often laced with mercury from cinnabar and filled with sacred offerings, suggest they were also ceremonial. Perhaps water was not only stored, but sanctified. As droughts intensified in later centuries, these sacred waters became both salvation and sorrow. The very substances used in ritual pigments, mercury and sensme, have poisoned the water supply. What once sustained may have turned bitter, a tragic irony carved in silence. Still the roads remained. Even as cities burned, rivers dried, and alliances fractured, the paths endured. Because the Maya did not see endings as final, they saw cycles. Destruction was not a fall, it was a breath before rebirth. Tikal spoke across centuries with its neighbors, and it listened to when gifts exchanged, in gods shared, in rituals mirrored under distant skies. Its people understood that connection was the true wealth, that jade crumbles, and cacao spoils, but memory travels. And now, you are part of it. In the next chapter we leave the trade routes behind and return to the heart of ceremony. We will step into the sacred plazas during the solstice, feel the rhythm of ritual drums, and glimpse the divine as seen by ancient eyes. Beneath the turning wheel of stars, the temples of Tikal stand not as ruins, but as instruments of time. Their stones do not merely endure, they resonate. When the solstice sun crests the horizon or when the moon reaches its zenith, the city does not just reflect the sky, it answers it. Tonight, we enter the sacred plazas not as tourists, but as dreamers. We come not to look, but to listen. The Maya were not passive observers of time. They were its choreographers, its architects. Time was not a line, but a great wheel, interlocking cycles of days, months, and cosmic rhythms that danced in synchronicity with the heavens. Their temples were the stage upon which this great drama unfolded. As we walk into the great plaza during the winter solstice, imagine the city bathed in pale dawn light, the shadows of Temple I and Temple II stretch across the plaza like silent priests. The first rays of sunlight strike the east-facing facade of Temple I, lighting its staircase in golden fire. It is not coincidence. It is design. The Maya aligned their most sacred structures to the solstices and equinoxes. These alignments were not aesthetic, they were ceremonial keys. When the sun appeared in a precise position, it signaled the time for ritual, for planting, for offering. It marked the turning of sacred calendars, the fulfillment of prophecy. Temple I, the temple of the great jaguar, rises steeply, with 9 levels symbolizing the 9 layers of the underworld. At its summit once stood a temple chamber, where only the high priest or king could ascend. From there, the ruler would address the city, his voice carrying across the plaza like thunder caught in stone. Its twin, Temple 2, the Temple of the Masks, faces west. Between them stretches the plaza, a vast ceremonial mirror of cosmic balance. Here, life and death danced in ritual harmony. The temples were not only tombs or palaces, they were instruments of celestial music, built to receive the light of gods. And so we pause here, in the soft breath of morning, as incense curls from altars and distant flutes echo in memory. To the Maya, ceremony was not performance, it was communication. Each gesture, each word, each offering carried the weight of thousands of years. The gods did not reside in distant realms. They lived in the wind, the fire, the maze. The temple was not where the divine visited, it was where the divine dwelt. Let us imagine now a solstice ritual. The plaza is filled with people, nobles adorned in jade and feathers, commoners with offerings of food and flowers. At the heart stands the ruler, cloaked in jaguar skin, the embodiment of divine kingship. Behind him, priests chant in low rhythmic syllables, calling on the gods of the sun, the sky, and the cornfields. As the sun rises and its rays pass through the temple's door, striking an altar placed with precision, a great silence falls. This is the moment of balance. The universe has turned its face. Time has spoken, an offering is made. Perhaps a bowl of cacao, perhaps the king's own blood drawn with an obsidian blade. This is not cruelty, it is gift. A covenant between the seen and unseen. The blood is caught on bark paper, which is then burned. The smoke rises, curling into the morning air, a bridge between the worlds. Through this smoke, the Maya believed the gods would see their devotion. The act was not violent, it was sacred. Around the plaza, drums begin to beat, flutes rise in harmony, dancers move in slow, sweeping patterns, their movements mirroring constellations. Each step tells a story, reenacts a myth, calls forth the ancestors. Every element has meaning. The east side of the plaza, associated with life and beginnings. The west, with endings and the underworld. The north, a place of death and rebirth. The south, of fire and transformation. To stand in the center was to be at the navel of the world. Tikal's temple complexes are arranged along these sacred directions, not by accident, but by belief. The very earth was considered a living being, puts cardinal points extensions of divine order. By aligning structures to this order, the Maya ensured that their cities became living mandalas. Even the stairways hold secrets. To ascend a temple was to ascend the cosmos. The number of steps often matched the sacred calendars, 91 steps for the seasons, 260 for the Tezokan cycle. Each ascent was a pilgrimage in miniature, a symbolic climb toward the divine. In many temples, panels carved with glyphs and images lined the upper walls. They depict kings performing rituals, gods bestowing power, and scenes from mythology that still shimmer with mystery. These are not merely decorative, they are textual. The Maya did not separate art from writing. They wrote in images, carved in sound, and among the most powerful of these images are the celestial band symbols denoting the heavens, the sun, the moon, and Venus. These heavenly bodies were constant presences in Maya life. Their movements dictated ceremony, agriculture, and warfare. The morning star, in particular, was a sign of power and peril. Within these temples, astronomers watched the sky, priests interpreted omens, rulers made decisions that aligned not only with politics, but with prophecy. But what happens when the light begins to shift? As climate change slowly brought longer droughts and celestial signs no longer aligned with earthly fortunes, doubts may have crept into the sacred order. If the solstice sun rose, but the crops failed, what did it mean? Had the gods withdrawn? Had humanity failed to keep the balance? The ceremonies continued, but something had shifted. The plazas grew quieter, fewer offerings were made, glyphs became hurried, as if history itself was running out of time. And yet, the temples still stood. They do today. Walk among them at dusk, and you will see shadows stretch across the stones just as they did centuries ago. Climb the stairways, and you will feel the same wind. Sit beneath the trees, and you may hear a distant drum. Tikal still sings. Not loudly, but as a murmur, a whisper woven into light and stone. In our next chapter, we look beyond the city once more to the enemies and allies that shaped Tikal's fate. We will examine the great wars of the Maya, not as battles alone, but as sacred contests of destiny. The jungle has many voices. Some are soft like the sigh of wind through palm leaves, or the coo of a quetzal in the distance. Others are louder, ancient echoes of power and ambition. For Tikal, These echoes once carried the footsteps of enemies. Not all roads led to peace. Some carried warriors. To understand Tikal's fate, we must cross the forest to meet its most formidable reviler city cloaked in venomous mystery, Kalokmul, the Serpent Kingdom. Its emblem glyph was not just a snake, but the head of one, open-mouthed, eternal. For centuries, Tikal and Kalokmul vied for dominance in what can only be called a sacred war, one that transcended territory and reached into the realm of the gods. This was not conflict as we know it. These were not battles for land alone, but for cosmic legitimacy. In Maya belief, a ruler's power was ordained by the heavens. To defeat a rival was not just victory, it was proof that the gods had chosen you. Kalokmul lay far to the north, deep within what is now the Mexican state of Campeche. Its ruins today stretch over 30 square miles, hidden beneath trees and mist. But in the classic period, it was one of the great superpowers of the Maya world. With influence over dozens of satellite cities and alliances reaching into the heart of the Kalokmul was a serpent that wrapped itself around the lowlands. The rivalry with Tikal reached its most dramatic moment in the year 562 AD. This year is marked in stele as the beginning of the hiatus. A chilling silence in Tikal's public record. No new monuments, no grand constructions, no inscriptions of victory. For over a century, the city that once sang to the stars grew quiet. What happened? The answer lies with a figure known as Sky Witnesson, a Jaw of Kalokmul whose very name seems written in smoke. Under his rule, Kalokmul forged a powerful alliance with Rekal, a city to the southeast of Tikal. Together they moved against the Jaguar kingdom. The result was devastating. Tikal's king, Wakchan Kaawil, known to us through glyphs as Double Bird, was likely killed or overthrown. Temples ceased to rise. Power fractured. Even the ceremonial calendar, once so tightly kept, may have faltered. But as with all cycles in Maya belief, winter yields to spring. In 682 AD, a new name rose like thunder from the silence. Jasor Chan Kaawil, a descendant of the old royal line. He led Tikal out of the shadows with the brilliance of the sun. Through military genius and cosmic timing, he reclaimed the city's divine right. His greatest triumph came in 695 AD when Tikal dealt a crippling blow to Kalokmul. The enemy's ruler was captured or killed. Records are unclear, but the message resounded through the jungle. Tikal had awakened. This victory was not just military, it was spiritual. The gods had smiled again upon the city of the great Jaguar. Temples rose, monuments blossomed, plazas danced once more beneath incense and music. But power is a burden. Every war I planted the seed of the next. The Maya kings were not absolute monarchs. They were mediators between worlds, expected to balance the forces of nature, sky, and human need. Victory required ritual, sacrifice, continuity, and each conquest brought more cities under Tikal's watch. Naranjo, Uaxaction, and others all became pieces on a divine chessboard. Diplomacy was a ritual dance of marriages, feasts, and blood offerings. The ruler was the axis of this wheel, and if he faltered, the cosmos could collapse. Many of these alliances were symbolized through emblem glyphs, city signatures, etched in stone, like royal crests. When Tikal's glyph appeared atop another's in a monument, it meant submission. Sometimes a defeated ruler was taken back to Tikal and sacrificed not out of cruelty, but to appease the gods and preserve order. Yet, war has its cost. Every triumph brought new needs, more maize, more tribute, more sacred order to maintain. The cycle spiraled. Even as Tikal reached its golden heights under rulers like Jasor Chan Kaawil and his descendants, cracks began to form beneath the polished stone. Drought tightened its grip. Peasant labor became strained. Trade routes shifted, and rivalries flared anew. The once mighty Kalokmul, though wounded, did not vanish. Other cities rose. The network of alliances became a net, slowly strangling itself. Tikal responded with ceremony, more temples, larger monuments, deeper offerings. But was it enough? Perhaps the gods were watching. Perhaps the ancestors whispered warnings in the ears of priests. Or perhaps the people themselves began to question the cost. Still, the stele were carved. The plazas filled, and the war drums beat. In the next chapter we leave the battlefield behind and journey into the soul of Maya writing, the glyphs carved in stone, inked on bark and whispered through memory. We will explore how Tikal recorded its story, and what secrets remain unread. In the cool silence of Tikal's ruined corridors, there are stories still speaking, though they have no voice, not sung aloud, nor written in alphabet. These stories are carved in loops and curves, in sacred geometry and symbolic breath. They are the Maya glyphs, the writing of gods, kings, time, and dreams. We begin in the shadows of the temple of the inscriptions. Light filters in, striking the surface of a stela covered in glyphs, each one both picture and word, both art and syllable. Here, the past does not pass away. It is recorded, immortal, etched into stone with obsidian blades and reverence. The Maya were among the few ancient civilizations to develop a fully functional written language. Their script is logosyllabic, meaning it combines logograms, symbols representing whole words with phonetic syllables. And in these thousands of elegant signs, they captured the rhythms of their universe. Tikal's walls are filled with them. The glyphs speak of battles and births, of eclipses and enthronements, of gods that rise from caves and kings who walk between worlds. They are not static marks, they are alive with meaning. We pause before Stela 31, one of the most famous monuments of Tikal. It commemorates the reign of Seoj Chan Kaawil II, son of the legendary Fire is Born dynasty. The stela shows him standing in ceremonial regalia, holding a staff of power, his body adorned with jewels. Around him spiral lines of glyphs, 30 or more, in a single column, each one meticulously carved. The text tells of his birth, his accession, his lineage stretching back to mythic times. It does not simply state events, it situates them within the cycles of time. The date is not just September 17, 445 AD, it is expressed through a divine calendar, 8 Kaeton, 14 Tun, 3 Wino, 2 Kaini, each number sacred, each interval resonant with cosmic meaning. The Maya calendar system is central to their writing. They used several overlapping cycles, the 260-day Tizocan, the 365-day Hub, and the long count, which measures vast epochs from a mythic beginning in 3114 BC. The glyphs reveal how every ruler's act, every event, was anchored within these cycles. A battle won was meaningful only if it occurred on a propitious day. A coronation held true power only if the stars aligned. Writing was not separate from reality, it shaped it. Tikal scribes were priestly figures, trained in ritual, astronomy, and mythology. They painted their glyphs on ceramics, carved them in stone, and even etched them into the walls of tombs. They carried their tools, inkpots, brushes made of animal hair, and bark paper codices in decorated pouches like a modern scholar might carry books. Few of these codices remain, most were burned by conquistadors who could not read what they destroyed. Of the hundreds that once existed, only 4 are confirmed to have survived. And yet the stones remain. Over time, scholars and linguists have painstakingly recovered the meanings of these glyphs. From the work of Diego de Landa in the 16th century, who tried to transcribe Maya writing into Roman script, with mixed results, to modern epigraphers who use computer modeling and linguistics to decode inscriptions, the language is being heard again. Still, much remains unknown. Some glyphs repeat, but their full nuance is lost. Some signs seem to shift meaning depending on context. Others, especially those for metaphysical concepts, are layered with symbols from myth, astronomy, and number. One glyph for death, for instance, may resemble a skull, but another, more poetic, shows a descending sun. A third uses the image of an open hand. The Maya believed that words had power beyond communication. To speak something was to make it so. To carve it in stone was to give it life everlasting. And so, they wrote not just history, but memory. Not just fact, but feeling. We follow a trail of glyphs now, carved along a stairway in the Lost World complex. These glyphs describe rituals once performed at the rising of Venus. They describe a priest whose blood offering coincided with the first appearance of the morning star after a long absence. His act ensured rain, or so it was believed. Elsewhere, on the walls of the central Acropolis, we find graffiti, not crude, but careful, hand-carved images of dancers, gods, animals, perhaps made by a scribe in training, perhaps a final offering before the city was left behind. Even these carry weight. Writing in Tikal was also an act of competition. Cities often carved their victories in glyphs that belittled rivals. One monument might declare that a neighboring city's ruler ate excrement after defeat. Another might claim that a captured noble was not even worth sacrifice. These were not jokes, they were cosmic truths, as perceived by the victor. Yet there is tenderness too. One ceramic vase, likely buried with a noble, bears a painted inscription that reads, "The drinking vessel of the beloved one," a quiet phrase, but eternal, a love, wrapped in time, offered to the gods. We may never fully translate all the glyphs, but in the silence between them, something lingers, a sense of devotion, of identity, of presence. Tikal's glyphs are not only records, they are echoes of voices that still resonate through time. They speak to us not in commands, but in invitations to look closer, to feel deeper. In our next chapter, we turn inward to the daily lives of those who lived beneath the temples, who farmed the maize, bore the burdens, and prayed with hands stained by sun and soil. The story of Tikal is not only kings and gods, it is also the story of its people. The temples of Tikal rise with quiet grandeur, their silhouettes etched against the sky like memories too tall to forget. Yet beneath their shadowed majesty, beyond the grand stelae and sacred plazas, there lived a different kind of heartbeat, one not carved in stone but carried in the calloused hands of everyday lives. Tonight, we step down from the pyramids, away from kings and gods, into the homes of the people, the unseen majority, the ones who wove the fabric of this city, thread by humble thread. As dawn breaks, we find ourselves in a cluster of modest dwellings just beyond the ceremonial core. These were the residential zones spread out beneath the trees, nestled between stone causeways and garden plots. Here lived the farmers, potters, builders, and priests in training. Their homes were not built to last 1,000 years, but some remnants remain. Low platforms of stone, hearths still blackened by ancient flame, sherds of ceramic bowls once filled with tamales or soup. A Maya home was more than shelter. It was a microcosm of the universe. The four corners represented the cardinal directions. The thatched roof was the sky, the floor, the earth, the central hearth, a sacred place where ancestors were honored and meals were cooked with prayer. Imagine now the start of a day. A woman kneels at the grinding stone, her rhythmic motion echoing the pulsing beat of the city. She crushes dried maize into masa, humming a song passed down through generations. Nearby, a man returns from the milk of the cornfield, his hands dirt-covered, his feet bare. A child gathers firewood, eyes wide with wonder as she watches the sky, where a toucan flies overhead. These were lives woven into ritual. The Maya did not separate the sacred from the mundane. Every act from planting maize to lighting a fire was a form of prayer. Each meal was an offering. Each spoken word, a spell. Even weaving carried cosmic meaning. The patterns stitched into cloths were not random, they reflected constellations, deities, and the threads of time. The diet of the average Tikal inhabitant was simple, but rich in symbolism. Maize was the centerpiece, not just food, but essence. In the Popol Vuh, the Maya origin story, humans were shaped from maize dough. To eat maize was to renew the body and spirit. It was often accompanied by beans, squash, chili, and sometimes turkey or fish. Cacao, while sacred and more often reserved for the elite, may have found its way into special community feasts. Salt and honey sweetened the meals and symbolized preservation and purity. Education was communal and sacred. Children learned by doing, through stories told at the hearth, through watching rituals in the plaza, through following their elders to the fields or workshops. Girls learned to weave, to grind maize, to care for shrines. Boys learned to carve, to plant, to listen for the tone of the conch shell that called for ceremony. There was music in the city, always. Clay flutes, wooden drums, rattles made of seeds. The sounds of Tikal were not only human, they echoed the forest, the croak of frogs, the rustle of birds, the low cry of jaguars at night. The people of Tikal lived close to nature, not outside of it. Every stone path was laid with awareness of the spirits that dwelled in tree, river, and rock. Labor was not faceless toil, it was contribution to the sacred whole. The massive stones of the temples did not rise by magic, they were pulled, lifted, and carved by thousands of hands. Lime plaster for the towering pyramids was made by burning limestone, a task that required endless wood, careful technique, and patient labor. Water had to be hauled, crops tended, tools sharpened. Some workers were specialist skilled masons, astronomers, bone carvers, or scribes. Others were general laborers, called upon during large state projects. There may have been a form of tribute labor, where villagers around Tikal sent their youth for weeks at a time to serve the city. These were not slaves, but citizens bound by duty, ritual, and cosmic necessity. Even illness and death were integrated into the cosmic cycle. A shaman priest would attend the sick, chanting while applying herbal poultices or burning incense. The dead were buried near the home, wrapped in cloth, with offerings placed beside them, tools, food, tokens for the journey to Xibalba. Their spirits were honored regularly, spoken to as though they had merely stepped into another room. Love, too, left its trace. Among the ceramic vessels found in humble graves, some bear glyphs of affection, for the hand of my beloved, a simple phrase, yet timeless, a reminder that the people of Tikal, beneath the grandeur and gods, were human. They mourned, they hoped, they dreamed. As we walk through these quieter quarters of the city, we see not just stone but spirit, a broken spindle whorl, a piece of carved bone, a footprint fossilized in ancient plaster. These are echoes of laughter, of weeping, of stories whispered under starlight. And while their names may be lost, their lives still speak. The fall of Tikal cannot be understood without them. For when the ruler's power waned, it was the people who bore the weight. When the rituals failed to bring rain, it was their crops that withered. When the jungle began its return, it crept first around their homes. But even as the city emptied, many may have stayed. Not in the palaces, but in the periphery. Living simpler lives, whispering old prayers, planting maize beneath the shadow of forgotten temples. In our next chapter, we return to the realm of mystery. We follow the archaeologists, those modern seekers who have come with brush and trowel to awaken the sleeping city. What have they found? What secrets still lie buried? The jungle breathes quietly over Tikal, unaware or perhaps deeply aware of the secrets buried in its soil. For centuries after the city's last echoes faded, its temples lay wrapped in vines, its stele hidden beneath centuries of moss and silence. The forest reclaimed what was once its own, and Tikal became myth, a whispered place. But in time, the dream stirred. It began with footsteps, curious, reverent, and hesitant. Explorers from distant lands, carrying maps sketched from hearsay and legend, began to push their way through the thick canopy in the 19th century. Among them were priests, adventurers, and early archaeologists, all drawn by stories of lost cities and sky-reaching temples. What they found was staggering. In 1848, a Guatemalan government expedition led by Modesto and Ambrosio Tut documented what the forest had hidden. Towering stone pyramids covered in vegetation, rooms still intact, stele with symbols no one could read. They sent their reports to Europe, where artists like Frederick Catherwood would later draw haunting, moss-covered ruins, evoking wonder in minds far removed from the jungle. Yet for all the OW, the mystery deepened. Who built these temples? What stories did the glyphs tell? How had such an advanced city disappeared so silently? For over a century, these questions guided countless researchers. The work of archaeologists at Tikal has spanned generations, and continues to this day through excavation, photography, radiocarbon dating, and satellite imagery. The city has slowly been unwrapped, not unlike a mummy, delicate and layered with meaning. Imagine walking with a team of modern archaeologists. The air is heavy with humidity. Birds cry above. Beneath your feet lies a mound of earth and vegetation. It looks like a hill, but beneath it is a temple, untouched for 1,000 years. Excavation begins with brushes, not shovels. Every layer of soil is carefully removed. Each fragment of pottery, bone, obsidian, or jade is documented, catalogued, and examined. Even the position of a fallen stone matters. It tells a story. Sometimes the jungle resists. Trees grip the stones with roots like fingers. Creatures nest in the chambers. Rain washes away markings. Time blurs the lines between ruin and forest. But the archaeologists persist not to rebuild, but to listen, to interpret. Some discoveries are monumental. In the 1950s and 60s, under the guidance of the University of Pennsylvania and the government of Guatemala, major excavations revealed Temple I's interior tomb likely that of Jasar Chan Kayawil. Eye within, archaeologists found jade ornaments, ceramics, and bones, confirming the identity of the ruler from inscriptions and offerings. It was one of the greatest archaeological finds in Mesoamerica. Other discoveries are more subtle, but no less profound. A cache of flint blades beneath a plaza stone, suggesting ritual sacrifice. A child's grave beneath a noble home. A painted bowl that shows the god of maize emerging from a turtle's mouth, reenacting cosmic rebirth. Technology has opened new dimensions. LiDAR light detection and ranging has allowed researchers to see through the jungle canopy, revealing an astonishing truth. Tikal was even larger than imagined. What once seemed like scattered ruins were part of a vast urban network: roads, agricultural terraces, reservoirs, and suburbs, all hidden beneath trees for centuries. It revealed a thriving metropolis, dense with infrastructure, planned and maintained by generations. Still, many secrets remain buried. For every stele that is translated, another lies shattered, its glyphs unreadable. For every temple unearthed, dozens remain untouched, either for preservation or lack of resources. The earth holds more than we can know. Some questions may never be answered. Why, truly, was Tikal abandoned? Was it a perfect storm of drought, war, political collapse, and spiritual disillusionment? Or did something deeper shift something within the collective soul of a people who chose, quietly, to walk away from the temples they once raised? Even the answers we have are laced with ambiguity. Archaeology, like dreaming, is not always clear. It requires trust in fragments, patience with silence, reverence for what cannot be reconstructed. And sometimes, the jungle offers strange gifts. In one chamber, a wall painting is discovered still vibrant after centuries, showing musicians in mid-step, a drummer, a flutist, a dancer whose arms curve like serpent coils. Their faces are serene, their eyes closed, as if they knew that one day, someone would find them, as if they never truly left. In another structure, hidden beneath rubble, a panel is found with glyphs describing an eclipse ceremony, performed at midnight, witnessed by hundreds. The record ends mid-glyph, as if the scribe was interrupted, or perhaps as if that moment was meant to remain unfinished. To walk through Tikal today is to walk through time's garden. Children laugh along the same causeways where priests once burned incense. Tourists whisper in awe at temples once climbed in solemn ritual. And at night, when the jungle quiets, the stones still hum. The archaeologists may record data, but they are also dreamers, guardians of memory, seekers of lost meaning. And Tikal itself is not just a place, it is a question carved in stone, buried in soil, waiting patiently beneath layers of silence and sky. In our next chapter, we shift focus from the physical to the spiritual. We explore the Maya cosmos, their gods, their visions, their understanding of reality as something layered, cyclical, and utterly alive. In the heart of the Maya world, the universe was not distant, it was immediate, layered, and living. To walk beneath the ceiba tree was to walk at the center of creation. To gaze into the stars was to gaze into the souls of gods, and to breathe the jungle air was to inhale the breath of the cosmos itself. Tonight, we do not merely study the Maya world, we step into it. Their cosmos was not a flat landscape nor a simple heaven above and hell below. It was a three-tiered reality, deeply interwoven with myth, motion, and meaning. At the center of it all stood the Wakachantha world tree, the Axis Mundi, the sacred ceiba that connected all realms. Its roots reached into the underworld, Shibalba. Its trunk passed through our earthly plane, and its branches touched the heavens, where celestial beings, gods, and ancestors dwelled. This tree was not symbolic, it was real, imagined, and revered in daily life. Ceiba trees, tall and pale, dotted the Maya lands, rising like silent pillars of meaning. To the Maya, every space, every house, city, and temple was aligned with this sacred cosmology. Tikal was no exception. Its temples did not rise at random. They were built to mirror the heavens, to echo the shape of the world tree, to reflect the order of the universe. Let us look skyward now, as a Maya priest might have. Above us, the night sky unfolds with astonishing clarity. The Milky Way stretches like a river of stars, its cloudy band cutting the sky in two. To the Maya, this was not just a galaxy. It was the cosmic serpent, the sky road, the back of the crocodile god who floated creation on his spiny back. When certain constellations rose or crossed the Milky Way, it was said the gods were walking between realms. Venus was one of the most important celestial bodies. It was not just a planet, it was a deity, a warrior, and a harbinger. Its cycles were tracked with precision across centuries. When Venus rose as the morning star, it was a time of conflict and opportunity. When it set, the underworld stirred. The sun was a god reborn each morning. His journey across the sky was a ritual passage, a divine trial. Each sunset was his descent into the underworld, and each dawn his triumphant return. The temples of Tikal, aligned with solar stations, allowed the people to participate in his journey through ritual and architecture. The moon, too, was sacred, linked to femininity, water, fertility. Lunar eclipses were not merely astronomical events, they were cosmic dramas, times when gods wrestled in the heavens. Rituals were held to protect the people during such moments, to restore balance. The stars told stories. Orion's belt was known as the hearthstones, placed to hold the fire of creation. The Pleiades were linked to maize, growth, and seasonal renewal. Comets were seen as omens, sometimes divine messages, sometimes warnings, yet for all their skyward reverence, the Maya were deeply rooted in the earth. They believed the surface of the earth was sacred land formed on the back of a cosmic turtle. Caves were not empty voids, they were mouths of the earth, entrances to the other world. Offerings were made deep in their chambers, and some caves were visited only by the most powerful priests. These were places where dreams mingled with reality, where ancestors spoke, and where spirits walked. Tikal was ringed with such spaces. Not all of them survive, but the understanding remains. To the Maya, reality was porous. The spiritual and material flowed freely between each other. Rituals reflected this cosmic structure. The king, at the center of his city, was the world tree made flesh. When he performed bloodletting rituals, piercing his tongue or genitals, allowing his blood to fall upon bark paper and be burned, the rising smoke symbolized the ascent of prayers to the heavens. In return, visions were seen, gods, serpents, ancestors, and divine creatures revealing messages from beyond. Hallucinogenic substances were often used in these rituals not as escapes from reality, but as doorways deeper into it. The Maya did not seek to flee the world. They sought to inhabit it fully, on all planes. Sacred geometry guided architecture and ritual. The number 13, representing the levels of heaven. The number 9, representing the layers of the underworld. These numbers were encoded into the steps of pyramids, the arrangement of courtyards, the timing of festivals. Time itself was divine. Each day in the Tusokan calendar had its own spirit, its own energy. People were born under specific designs that shaped their destiny. Time was not passive, it was active, a living rhythm. To misalign with it was to fall out of harmony with the cosmos. Even silence held meaning. There were times for speech, and times for stillness. Moments when the jungle hushed were listened to carefully. A sudden silence among birds was a sign. The Maya read the world like a text filled with layers of metaphor and divine handwriting. And so, we return to Tikal not as ruins, but as a still living diagram of the universe. The plazas, causeways, and temples are not just remnants, they are echoes of a worldview that saw meaning in every shadow and every star. In our next chapter, we follow the final days of Tikal's classical power. We watch as the sacred order begins to unravel, not with destruction, but with forgetting. The city's last songs are quiet, and we listen. In the stillness after ritual, there is always a breath, a pause, a moment when the incense fades, the drums fall quiet, and even the sacred winds seem unsure of their path. This is how the end of Tikal begins, not with flames or conquest, but with silence. Silence in the temples, silence in the plazas, silence in the stars. The decline of Tikal was not a single event. It was not a catastrophe etched into the stone. It was a fading, a gradual unraveling of cosmic threads, a dissolution of harmony, a quiet forgetting of what once seemed eternal. By the late 8th century, Tikal remained monumental in form, but the soul of the city had begun to flicker. The great rituals still echoed, at least for a time. Kings continued to raise stelae, to offer blood, to speak the old words beneath the rising sun, but the monuments grew simpler, the glyphs more hurried. The artistry, once resplendent, began to lose its sacred symmetry. The cosmic balance, the divine clockwork of time and sky had begun to misalign. The rains grew erratic. Droughts, once rare and temporary, began to deepen. The reservoirs of Tikal, those vast sacred mirrors that once reflected stars, began to fail. Water stagnated. Ritual pigments and cinnabar leached into the supply, turning it toxic. The very substances used to honor the gods poisoned the lifeblood of the city. The people would have felt it first. The farmers whose maize withered in cracked soil. The children whose coughs lingered. The mothers whose offerings yielded no relief. And perhaps, in whispered corners, a terrifying thought emerged: had the gods turned away? Some cities responded to the changing times with fervor. In other parts of the Maya world, rulers built even more massive temples, raised stelae in desperation, performed more frequent sacrifices, as if louder prayers might stir the silent heavens. But in Tikal, something different unfolded. The last known monument dated in Tikal is from around 869 AD. After that, the stones fall quiet. No more royal inscriptions, no more carved deeds of kings. It is as if the great voice of the city chose to stop speaking. Did the rulers lose the confidence of their people? Did the priests cease to dream? Perhaps the sacred rituals felt hollow. Perhaps the stars no longer answered. Perhaps the weight of centuries became too much. We walk now through the once grand plazas. Moss creeps over stone. Trees split stairways with their roots. The temples remain, but they do not command as they once did. They stand like elders forgotten by time. And yet, life did not vanish overnight. Evidence suggests that small communities lingered on the outskirts of the ceremonial core. Families tending gardens, making pottery, grinding maize as they had for generations. But the central engine, the sacred cosmic machinery that kept time and meaning alive, had wound down. Without ritual, the city lost more than power. It lost direction. The Maya worldview depended on cycles, but cycles required memory knowledge passed down, ceremonies performed at the right moment, glyphs read with reverence. As fewer priests were trained, fewer scribes carved glyphs, fewer rulers commissioned monuments, the cycle faltered, and then the jungle returned, not with violence, but with patience. Roots crept into palaces, vines draped themselves across causeways, trees rose where processions once marched, animals returned. The earth, ever watchful, resumed her dominion. It is tempting to call this the end, but for the Maya there is no end, only turning. The descendants of those who built Tikal did not vanish. They moved, shifted, changed. Some migrated to other regions, some retreated into smaller communities, some stayed, living quietly in the ruins of what once was. Their traditions survived. In language, in ceremony, in the weaving of cloth, in the planting of maize, in dreams. Even now, in the Maya communities of Guatemala, Belize, and southern Mexico, echoes of Tikal still stir. The calendars are still kept, the gods still named, the sacred Seba still honored. Archaeologists have found evidence of intentional closure at Tikal, altars buried, shrines sealed, plazas swept one final time. These were not signs of chaos, but of solemn departure, as if the people, sensing the end of an age, chose to walk away with dignity, as if they knew the cycle would turn again. And now, we are the ones who return. We come not with conquest, but with questions. With reverence, we walk among the temples in silence, and we listen. Perhaps the gods are not silent after all. Perhaps they are only waiting. In our next chapter we look at Tikal through the eyes of myth. We weave together the fragments of history, legend, and dream and ask, not what was, but what still is. Night has fallen over the forest canopy. The stars shimmer above Tikal, scattered like seeds across obsidian sky. The jungle hums with quiet life. Beneath this celestial dome, the ancient city rests not as a ruin, but as a dream made stone. For Tikal is not only a place, it is a memory, a living myth woven into the body of the earth. In this chapter, we no longer seek timelines. We release the grip of carbon dating, architecture, and warfare. Instead, we move through story, shadow, and silence. We ask, what does Tikal mean when no one is watching? What whispers still linger when the world forgets? To the Maya, history and myth were not separate. Time did not divide past from present. The hero twins who played the ball game in the underworld, the gods who shaped humanity from maize, the ancestors who carved cities from jungle, they were all part of the same eternal song. A song sung through rituals, through names, through stone, and Tikal was one of its verses. The city was once called Mutilitz, emblem glyph, shaped like a knot of hair or a woven bundle, a symbol of joining, of binding. It was a cosmic axis, where sky and earth met, where kings spoke with gods, where time could be touched. In its sacred plazas, myths were performed in real time, blurring the lines between man and deity. Every structure had spirit. Temple I was not just the tomb of a king, it was a gateway. The soul of Jaso Chan Kaiawil, I was believed to ascend from that summit into the celestial realms, joining the lineage of divine kings who guide the sun. Temple too, opposite him, is said to honor his queen. Their eternal gaze meets across the plaza, balance of masculine and feminine, of sun and moon, of living memory and silence. The great plaza between them is more than space. It is a still pool reflecting the stars, a meeting place of forces. Imagine it during a ceremony, incense swirling, flutes trembling, dancers spinning in firelight. The gods would have watched from the tree line, or perhaps they walked among the crowd. Legends say that the jungle is alive with their presence still. Some modern Maya believe that beneath certain temples, the Aloks dwell small guardian spirits who protect sacred places. Offerings are still made to appease them. A bit of cacao, a whisper, a moment of stillness beneath a tree older than memory. Tikal is full of such trees, sabers thick and sprawling, their roots like rivers, their branches like roads to the gods. At night, their silhouettes resemble ancient guardians. Some say if you sleep beneath one, your dreams will not be your own. They will be the dreams of the city, of its past, of its stone. There are stories, modern ones, of travelers hearing flutes in the mist, of seeing lights flicker across temples long abandoned, of feeling watched, not with malice, but with deep ancient curiosity. Perhaps these are tricks of the senses, or perhaps Tikal remembers, because it is built not just of limestone, but of intention. Every measurement, every angle, every carving was shaped by worldview, and that worldview is not dead. It is only quiet, it waits. The Maya calendar teaches that time moves in great cycles. The end of one age is the birth of another. When the long count turned in 2012, many feared destruction. But among Maya elders, it was never an end, it was a breath, a turning of the great wheel. And so too with Tikal. Its decline was not death, it was a transformation. The The city fell silent so that others might speak. Its stones were wrapped in jungle so they could dream in peace. And now, as we return to them, we are invited not to awaken but to listen. To walk through Tikal today is to walk through a place where time folds. Here, the past is not past. It lingers in the air, in the roots, in the rhythm of your own footsteps on ancient causeways. You do not visit Tikal, you enter its memory, and in doing so, you become part of its dream. In our next chapter, we explore the surviving wisdom of the Maya people, the keepers of calendars, sky, maze, and story. We will meet the living descendants of those who once built this city, and hear how the spirit of Tikal still lives through them. The flame that once flickered in the temples of Tikal was never truly extinguished. Though the city sleeps beneath layers of earth and leaf, its spirit moves quietly through the veins of a people who have never forgotten. The Maya live still, in Guatemala, Belize, southern Mexico, Honduras, and El Salvador. The descendants of the ancient Maya continued to speak in languages older than any European tongue on these lands. They cook with the same corn, they observe the same stars, and in certain quiet places, they whisper the same prayers. They are the keepers of the sacred flame. Tonight, we leave the temples and follow that flame. It does not burn in palaces anymore. It burns in kitchens, in fields, in festivals, in the words of grandmothers, teaching children the names of trees, the taste of rain, the patterns of time. There are over 30 modern Maya languages still spoken, among them Kech, Yucatec, Kekchi, and Mam. In these syllables dwell echoes of the glyphs once carved on Tikal's stele. The grammar has shifted, the contexts have evolved, but the essence remains. In many Maya communities, the calendar is still sacred. Daykeepers, respected spiritual guides, maintain the Tikal, counting the 260-day ritual cycle as their ancestors did. They rise before dawn, commune with fire, offer candles, flowers, cacao, and incense to the directions. Each day has its energy, its deity, its breath. When a child is born, their day sign is read to understand their destiny. When decisions are made, the calendar is consulted. This is not superstition, it is survival wrapped in reverence. These rituals are not performances for tourists. They are living acts of faith. We sit now with a daykeeper in the Guatemalan highlands. Her hands are worn, her eyes full of light. She lights 13 candles, red, white, black, and yellow, for the directions, for the ancestors, for balance. She speaks in Kaqchikel, a language Tikal never knew, yet somehow always knew. Her words thank the earth, the maize, the sun, the spirits of her lineage. She places copal on the fire. The smoke rises slowly, curling into the blue morning sky, as it did in Tikal, as it always has. The wisdom lives on in agriculture as well. The milpa system, an ancient method of growing maize, beans and squash together, still feeds millions. These crops are not just sustenance, they are the three sisters, intertwined in story and soil. Elders teach that maize is a person, a being with heart and spirit. You must speak to it. You must plant it with care, harvest it with thanks. In textiles, the stories continue. Maya weavers are artists and philosophers. Their looms carry history. Each village has its own patterns, colors, and symbols. Some depict the world tree, others echo constellations or sacred animals. A single hoopla woven blouse can contain generations of encoded knowledge. The weaver is not just making clothing, she is writing her story into thread. There is also resistance in this remembrance. The Maya have endured colonization, forced conversions, genocide, and marginalization. Their books were burned, their temples were stolen, their language forbidden in schools, and yet they remain not as relics, but as rivers ever flowing beneath the surface of history. In recent decades there has been a powerful resurgence. Young Maya scholars are learning to read the ancient glyphs. They are reclaiming their histories from foreign mouths. Maya filmmakers, poets, teachers, and activists are breathing new life into old stories. They visit Tikal not as tourists, but as descendants bearing offerings of memory. To stand at the foot of Temple I today and see a Maya priest lighting incense is to witness a reunion across centuries. The stone remembers. The smoke knows the way. Even in dreams, Tikal speaks to them. Some elders tell of visions in which the ancestors walk through the temples at night. They say the city has not been abandoned, only folded into another dimension, that when the time is right, it will open again, that its voice will rise. And so, the sacred flame is passed. From tongue to tongue, hand to hand, heart to heart, it burns not with fire, but with memory. It lights not temples, but lives. We must listen. We must understand that Tikal is not only a mystery to be solved, but a song to be heard, one whose chorus is sung by millions today. In our next chapter, we shift once more to the environment itself. We explore how the Maya shaped the land, how the jungle shaped them, and what the earth remembers of their footsteps. Before Tikal was stone, it was forest. Before it rose into myth, it was jungle, and long after its plazas fell silent, the trees returned not in conquest, but in quiet embrace. The Maya did not build their cities atop wilderness, they built within it, with it, through it. The jungle was never enemy nor obstacle, it was ancestor, provider, and sacred being, and in the end it became the keeper of memory. Tonight, we listen to the jungle, not just its creatures, the howler monkeys crying like thunder, the cicadas humming like distant drums, the parrots flashing like emerald fire, but to the soil, the roots, the ancient leaves that cradle the ruins of a lost empire. Tikal rests in the basin of northern Guatemala, one of the most biodiverse regions in the Americas. Dense tropical forest cloaks the land in layers of life. Here the air is thick with breath, the ground soft with centuries of fallen leaves, and every branch holds a secret. When the Maya came, they did not simply clear the land, they shaped it. Modern archaeology reveals a staggering truth. The rainforest surrounding Tikal is not untouched wilderness. It is a cultural forest, molded by human hands over thousands of years. The Maya terraced hillsides, dug canals, redirected water, and cultivated vast tracts of land. Their cities were not islands in a green sea, they were symphonies woven into the landscape. One of the most remarkable features of Tikal is its water management system. The city had no rivers, yet supported tens of thousands of people. The answer lies in reservoirs, artificial lakes, dug with precision, lined with clay, engineered to collect rain and runoff. Some held hundreds of thousands of gallons. They were interconnected like organs in a body, sustaining both ritual and survival. But even more astonishing are the subtle modifications: silt traps, filtration systems using sand and zeolite, evidence of sophisticated hydraulic engineering long before such terms existed. These reservoirs were not merely practical, they were sacred. Water was life, but also spirit. The Maya believed that caves and wells were entrances to the underworld. Reservoirs, too, were portals, mirrors of the sky above and doors to the world below. Offerings of jade, shell, and blood were cast into their depths. When droughts came, it was not just a loss of rain, it was a cosmic disconnection. The forest itself was curated. The Maya did not slash and burn indiscriminately. They practiced agroforestry, growing edible and medicinal trees alongside their crops. Sapodilla, avocado, ramon, and chicle trees were favored. They created a vertical farm, where maize thrived in the sun, and fruit trees provided food and shade beneath. They planted for generations. Their hands shaped the forest, and the forest remembered. Even in urban centers like Tikal, tree cover was maintained. Recent studies using LiDAR imaging have revealed patterns of managed forest within and around the city. Orchards, sacred groves, trees planted in alignment with temples and causeways. The jungle was not backdrop, it was participant. Animals were part of this relationship too. Jaguars were feared and revered. Monkeys were seen as tricksters and sometimes ancestors. Birds carried messages between realms. The Maya observed nature not from above, but from within. Every creature had spirit. Every rustle had meaning. And yet, harmony is delicate. In Tikal's final centuries, pressures grew. More people required more resources. Deforestation increased, trees felled for fuel, for lime plaster, for temples. Without trees, soil eroded. Water evaporated more quickly. The system faltered. When drought struck, the land could no longer recover. The sacred relationship between human and forest had been stretched thin, and in time, it broke. But the jungle did not rage. It waited. After the last ceremonies were performed, and the last rulers buried, the forest returned. Slowly, grasses first, then shrubs, then trees, inching up temple steps, pushing roots through palace walls, nesting birds in once sacred chambers. It covered not to erase, but to protect. Tikal became part of the forest again, not as ruin, but as memory. The jungle wrapped it in green, muffling the sharp edges of history, allowing time to breathe, undisturbed. Today, as archaeologists uncover more of Tikal, they do so with the forest's permission. For every stone revealed, 100 more sleep beneath roots and leaf. The jungle does not give up its stories easily, it whispers, it guards, and when you walk its paths through the undergrowth, beneath the soaring sabers, past the lianas that curl like serpents, you feel it, not fear but presence, a vast awareness, a quiet observation. The jungle remembers. It remembers the songs sung in plazas, the fires lit at dawn, the voices that once called to gods and to the sky. It remembers the footsteps of farmers, of priests, of kings. It remembers the offerings of maize and blood. It remembers silence, and it remembers song. And perhaps, as we move more gently through the world, it remembers us too. In our next chapter, we turn toward the legacy of Tikal not just as an archaeological site, but as a symbol of wisdom, resilience, and reverence for the cyclical nature of all things. Time, for the Maya, was never a straight road. It was a sacred mirror, curved and polished by the breath of gods, reflecting beginnings within endings and endings within beginnings. In this mirror, Tikal still stands, not just in stone, but in spirit. Tonight, we gaze into that mirror. Tikal's legacy is not found only in the towering temples or the glyphs carved into silence. It is found in what those things meant and what they still mean. It is found in the Maya understanding that all things are alive: time, stone, stars, breath, that to live well is to live in balance with the forces that spin the world. This vision lingers. For archaeologists, Tikal is a puzzle. For historians, a wonder. For travelers, a haunting beauty. But for the Maya people, it is more than all of these. It is a site of memory, of reverence, of quiet connection. It is a place where ancestors speak, and where the world once turned with precision and prayer. And for us, tonight, it becomes a mirror. In that mirror, we see how a civilization rose through cooperation, ritual, and deep respect for the rhythms of the land and sky. We see how they built not just with stone, but with intention. How they understood that to govern was to listen to time, to gods, to the murmurs of the earth beneath their feet. But we also see a warning. Tikal declined not in a single blaze, but in slow forgetting. As systems strained, as belief faltered, as the land gave less and less, the people left not in anger, but in sorrow. The great songs were no longer sung. The balance had shifted. The sacred mirror had cracked. And now, centuries later, we hold a mirror of our own. We, too, shape the land. We, too, chart the stars. We build cities. We search for meaning, but we move faster. We forget more quickly. We hear the earth's warnings in flood and flame, in silence and storm, yet still we rush forward. Tikal whispers across the centuries not to judge, but to remind. It reminds us that wisdom is not loud, that resilience is not always forceful, that reverence is not weakness, but strength. It reminds us that a city, no matter how mighty, must live in harmony with the land that feeds it, and with the stories that give it purpose. It is easy to romanticize the past, but Tikal was never perfect. It had its hierarchies, its demands, its rituals of blood. And yet, it also held deep truths shaped over millennia of watching the stars. Listening to the jungle, marking the heartbeat of time in stone and shadow. In that rhythm there is something we have lost, and something we may yet find again. Even now, as night deepens over the temples, and moonlight paints the stone in silver, the city breathes, not with lungs, but with memory, not with voice, but with presence. If you stand quietly at the top of Temple IV, as the wind rustles through ceiba leaves, you might feel it a soft pull, a murmur rising from the stones, from the soil, from the sky itself. You are not alone. You never were. Tikal watches still, and in the great mirror of time, its reflection lingers not as a ruin, but as a teacher. In our next chapter, we draw near the end of this journey. We step gently through the final echoes of Tikal, gathering the lessons left behind like petals on an altar. What remains after the gods have walked away? What wisdom drifts through these dreams? When words fall away and ritual fades, what remains? In the still hush after the last chant has been spoken, after the last footfall in the plaza has settled into earth, there is a different kind of language of silence that speaks not with sound, but with presence. In this silence, Tikal endures. It is not a silence of absence, but of transformation. The kind of stillness that exists in sacred places the world over. A cathedral just before dawn, a desert under stars, a forest clearing where breath and wind move as one. In this silence, there are lessons carved not in books, but in stone. The first is this: the world is not inert. To the Maya and to those who remember their ways, the world is alive with spirit. The stars above you are not just distant suns, but watchers. The ground beneath you is not dead matter, but living memory. When you walk, you stir the past. When you listen, you hear more than just wind. In Tikal, everything was built with this understanding. Temples were not monuments to ego, but instruments tuned to the heavens. Causeways were not roads alone, but ceremonial veins. Even water held song. This lesson matters still. In our modern lives, it is easy to forget the aliveness of the world. We move quickly, carve paths through forest and sky, build cities where rivers once spoke. But the Maya remind us through silence and stone that reverence is not obsolete, it is necessary. The second lesson is about time. Tikal teaches that time is not merely progression, but pattern. It circles back, the past is not behind us, it walks beside us. The Maya counted time in cycles, in sacred intervals, that repeated and renewed. Their calendars were not clocks, but songs of recurrence. Our world, by contrast, races forward. We value speed, innovation, and novelty. But what if the wisdom we need is not ahead of us, but behind us? What if progress means returning not to imitate the past, but to hear its rhythm again? The third lesson is this: greatness fades without harmony. Tikal was magnificent, an apex of architecture, astronomy, and spirituality. But it relied on balance, with the land, with the heavens, with its people. When that balance eroded through environmental strain, political rivalry, and overreach, the center could not hold. And yet, the fall was not chaos. There was no final war, no explosion, no conquest, just quiet. Stele stopped being carved. Temples ceased to rise. People left, step by step, perhaps mourning, perhaps accepting, perhaps knowing that even the sacred must rest. What would it mean to recognize when a cycle is complete? What would it mean to step back not in defeat, but in reverence? The fourth lesson lies in the dream. Tikal was built by dreamers, people who looked at stars and saw gods, who walked through caves and felt the pulse of the earth, who shaped stone into stories meant to echo through centuries. That dream still lives. Every time a glyph is read, every time a Maya child learns their destiny, every time someone sits at the base of a forgotten temple and closes their eyes not to escape, but to listen, you, too, are part of that dream. You have walked these corridors in your mind, climbed these steps, stood in the shadow of jaguar-shaped kings. In doing so, you have entered the dream that Tikal keeps, a dream of balance, of mystery, of listening deeply to the world. Let us not forget this final truth. Not all ruins are broken. Some are resting, some are waiting. Tikal is not a ghost of glory, it is a monument to meaning. Its silence is not emptiness, but invitation. The gods may have walked away from the plaza, but they have not left the forest. Not truly. They are in the echo of the drum, in the glint of obsidian, in the hands of the weaver, in the roots of the sepia, in the quiet breath of those who remember, and in you. Now, in our next chapter, we move into the dusk of this journey. We trace the final lines of Tikal's legacy as it stretches toward the horizon. What of its stars, its kings, its people? Where have they gone, or have they simply changed shape? Memory does not fade, it transforms. In the Maya world, this truth pulses like a sacred drumbeat beneath every ceremony. Every stone, every breath of wind rustling through the ceiba leaves. The past does not vanish, it wears new forms. It lives in story, in blood, in the patient soil beneath the temples of Tikal. Tonight, we trace the shape of that memory. It is not a line, it is a spiral, returning, renewing, winding, ever inward and outward, like the carved shell glyph that marks rebirth and transformation in Maya writing. The city we have wandered through together is not a frozen relic of time, but a curve in this spiral, one chamber in a great memory palace. We begin with the stars. The Maya charted the sky with such precision that modern astronomers still marvel. Venus, the sun, the moon, all were inscribed into their temples and calendars. These were not passive observations, they were relationships. The heavens shaped life on earth. Tikal's architects built their temples in alignment with solstices, equinoxes, and celestial events. These alignments still work. If you rise before dawn and stand in the right place on the right day, the sun will crest the temple just as it did 12 centuries ago. That is the shape of memory. It glows golden through the mist, whispering, "We are still here." We look now to the names: Jasau-chan Kawiil, Yekin-chen Kaoil, Lady Six Sky, names carved into stone, burned into pottery, carried in the breath of descendants. They ruled, yes, but more than that, they dreamed. Their deeds, real and mythic, were carved into the body of the city. Their glyphs still tell stories on the stele that stand like sentinels in the plazas. Even after centuries of erosion, the curve of a nose, the reach of a hand, the emblem of a god, these still remain. Not clearly, but enough for memory to take shape. Then there are the footsteps. On a damp morning, archaeologists found impressions of bare feet in ancient plaster. A child, perhaps running across a courtyard, or a mother or a priest. That fleeting moment, soft human pressed into earth over 1,000 years ago. A shape of memory. Time passes, the jungle returns, but the imprint remains. in the songs. Some Maya communities still sing melodies whose origins are unknown. The words have changed, the instruments have shifted, but the rhythm, the heartbeat remains. Music that once filled the great plaza now plays in distant villages, at corn festivals, in weddings, in funerals. Each drumbeat is an echo, each chant, a thread, unbroken. We feel it, too, in the silence. The spaces where no glyphs remain, the stele cracked or looted, the temples unexcavated, still sleeping beneath vines. These are the soft outlines of what was, the memories we cannot name, but still carry. The Maya believed that forgetting was a kind of death. But they also believed that memory had form, that it could dwell in stone, in fire, in breath. They built memory into everything, and so, even as empires faded, the memory remained. And what of those who remember? The living Maya are not echoes. They are the memory itself, walking, in their language, their rituals, their griefs and joys. They carry Tikal within them not as nostalgia, but as presence. To speak Kesh or Kekshi is to whisper with the voice of centuries. Even the earth remembers. Satellite imagery reveals ancient roads beneath the forest, still straight and purposeful, hidden under centuries of growth. The soil itself, rich and black in certain places, remembers where the Maya once farmed, where they built, where they danced. This memory is not metaphor, it is fact. And yet, it is more than that, because memory is also dream. It shapes us as we shape it. To walk through Tikal is to be reshaped. Something in the hush of the forest, in the gaze of the temples, in the breath between footsteps it lingers. It imprints. It asks us not to move faster, but to feel deeper. Tikal teaches us that memory is not a burden, it is a guide. It does not bind us to the past, but invites us into right relationship with time, with place, with the sacred. We are not called to repeat what came before, but we are called to listen, and so we do. In our next chapter, we near the end. We gather the threads of this long journey not to tie them off, but to let them drift gently into sleep. We ask not what more can be known, but what it means to simply be still, and remember. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the fullness of presence. In the sacred heart of Tikal, where the trees lean like ancient witnesses and stone speaks only in shadow, there comes a moment when all movement fades. No flutes, no footsteps, only breath. The breath of the jungle, the breath of the earth, the breath of time itself. This is where we now stand. After temples and trade routes, glyphs and gods, after warriors and rituals and memory carved in lime and light, there is stillness, and in that stillness, a weight, not heavy like burden, but heavy like truth. We sit now at the base of temple. The wind is soft, curling around the corners of stone like a cat returning to its familiar path. Light drips through the trees like honey. Far off, the call of a howler monkey, and beneath it all, silence. It is in this moment that we understand. Tikal is not asking us to understand it, not with intellect, not with analysis. It is asking us to be with it, to let its silence fill us, to feel the gravity of all that has been held here, joy and death, creation and collapse, music and mourning. There is a kind of wisdom that only comes in stillness. The Maya knew this. Their ceremonies included moments of deep silence between chants, between drumbeats, between offerings. Those spaces were not emptiness, they were invitation. The gods did not speak loudly, they moved in wind, in flickers, in quiet knowing. We have rushed so far to reach this place. Across the chapters of this journey, we have walked with kings, danced in sacred plazas, traced glyphs with our fingers, watched the stars rise over jungle crowns. But now, all we are asked to do is pause, to breathe, to let Tikal speak without speaking. It says, all things move in rhythm, all things return. Nothing is ever truly lost. It is easy to fear silence in our world, a world of noise, of urgency, of constant demand. But Tikal shows us that silence is not loss, it is presence in its purest form. And it is within this stillness that the sacred becomes visible. The crack in the stone that holds a sprouting fern, the chipped glyph that still glows in morning sun, the shadow of a leaf that falls upon a stair once walked by a priestess whose name we will never know. These are not fragments, they are fullness. Even your breath, right now, as you listen in the quiet, this too is part of Tikal's story. You are not outside it, you are within it. Your listening completes it. There is a reason the Maya measured time in long breaths of centuries. They understood the value of the slow turning, of patience, of stillness. And now, in this quiet place, the weight of stillness asks us to do the same. To sit, to feel, to remember that we are not separate from what has been, nor from what will be, that each of us is a temple of memory, a glyph still being written, a thread in the great woven story of time. As the wind hushes and the shadows deepen, we prepare to leave this place not in body, but in focus. We take with us not answers, but echoes, not facts, but presence. Tikal will remain, always, beneath the trees, beneath the stars, beneath the skin of time, waiting, watching, whispering. In our next chapter we begin to descend from this journey. We walk back through the corridors of contemplation and let the dreams slowly close around us, like mist returning to the valley. One final song, gentle and slow. The path out of Tikal is not the same as the path we entered through, curiosities wide, hearts eager, breath quickened by the promise of mystery. But now, as we prepare to depart, we do so slowly. The world we return to is the same in shape, but different in feeling. Something has shifted. We have touched silence. We have walked among dreams. This is the path that leads home, not away from Tikal, but through it, through its echo, through its rhythm that still hums like a low note in the background of our thoughts. The sky above is darker now. The last violet hues of twilight retreat behind the canopy, and the jungle breathes in blue. Crickets rise in chorus, leaves sigh. The roots beneath our feet stretch deep into the earth, weaving beneath temples, beneath tombs, beneath time. And yet the trail is gentle. It winds past the moss-covered base of Temple V, where vines embrace ancient steps. It curves alongside the edge of the reservoir, still as black glass, reflecting not only stars but questions, and it moves past trees older than memory, their branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults. Each step feels slower now, not from weariness, but from reverence. For we are not merely leaving a place, we are carrying it within us. Tikal, for all its majesty, never demanded awe. It offered it freely. It did not boast of conquest. It whispered of balance. And in the spaces between the stones, in the cracks between the glyphs, it left room for your own breath to become part of its story. As we walked this final path, we remember the ones who walked it before, not only kings and scribes, but potters, children, weavers, farmers, a grandmother placing a candle near the altar, a young apprentice watching the stars from a temple rooftop, a dancer moving by firelight, her steps echoing constellations. They walked this path, too, and their footsteps are not erased. They linger like warmth in stone after sunset. The jungle, which once wrapped a city in quiet embrace, now parts gently to let us pass. There is no resistance, only rhythm. We feel the world returning, the world of now. The hum of machines, the glow of screens, the linear time that moves fast and forgets slowly. But we carry something different, a slowness, a knowing, a memory not our own, yet felt deeply. Tikal has not given us facts alone, it has given us rhythm. A reminder that the sacred is not only in the extraordinary, but in the stillness between thoughts. In the echo of a drum that no longer beats, yet still calls. As the forest thins and the first lights of modernity twinkle in the distance, we cross a quiet threshold. We do not say goodbye, because places like Tikal do not end. They wait. They watch, they whisper, they shape. You carry it with you now in your step, in your sleep, in the way you might pause tomorrow and look up at the stars and feel something stir. You are the path that leads home. In our final chapter, we return to the beginning, not to repeat, but to close with reverence, to offer thanks, to let the echoes settle like mist upon the temples, a gentle descent into rest. The stars have risen high now, quiet sentinels in the velvet sky, casting silver light over stone and shadow. The jungle, too, has quieted, its creatures nestled in foliage and root. The breath of night flows gently through the trees, and somewhere beyond the canopy, Tikal sleeps. But it is not the sleep of forgetting, it is the sleep of memory, of ritual, of rest. Tonight, as our journey draws to a close, we return not to the city's grandeur, but to its silence, to the quiet that lingers in corners where incense once burned, to the wind that curls around the stairways where dancers once turned in rhythm with the stars. To the gentle pulse of time that continues, even when no one watches. Tikal sleeps beneath the stars. It does not need to speak. Its presence is enough. The temples stand like dreaming giants, their stories held in the moss between stones. Temple I, where a king was buried with jade in his mouth to speak to the gods. Temple the Fourth, where the dawn once arrived in golden procession. The ball court where the sacred game played out the cosmic balance. All of them sleep now, and in their sleep, they dream. They dream of chants rising with the mist, of children laughing near sacred hearths, of scribes carving glyphs into bark, the sound of obsidian on wood like the ticking of time, of a city alive not just with people, but with presence, and still they dream. The dreams of Tikal are not linear. They spiral outward, echoing through generations, across languages, into the hands of the modern Maya who light candles for ancestors and whisper old names beneath the same stars. These dreams reach us, too, you who have walked this long path of memory and mystery, you who have listened through night and silence, you have become part of the dreaming. The very breath you carry into tomorrow bears traces of this sacred place. So now, in this final moment, let us offer thanks to the stones that hold the heat of history, to the jungle that watches with patient eyes, to the stars that still align with temples, as they did 1,000 years ago, to the Maya people past, present, eternal who kept the flame alive when all else fell quiet, and to you, dreamer, thank you for walking slowly through this story, for listening to the quiet places, for letting the weight of time rest gently upon your shoulders, not as burden, but as blessing. Tikal sleeps beneath the stars, but its dream continues through jungle root, through carved glyph, through breath and silence and memory. And now, as your eyes begin to grow heavy, as your breath deepens, as your own body finds rest, remember, you are not separate from this dream. You are part of it. Sleep well, traveler of time. May your rest be wrapped in the echoes of sacred stone, in the rhythm of ancient drums, and in the soft starlight that forever shines over Tikal.